what's up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of Catholic Girl on the Radio. I'm Rita Sekali from The Word with Rita, and today we're going to be talking about depression. We're going to be talking about suicide with my good friend Christine, who's going to share a little bit of her experience, but also her expertise in the field. So make sure to stay tuned. But before we do that, let's have a little bit of a reflection on what it means to suffer. It's obviously no secret to anybody that Christ suffered. And we constantly say that to a certain point, it becomes one of those true cliches. We're suffering with Christ. And we really, I think, don't take the time to actually understand what that means. When we are talking about Christ suffering, we're not just saying that he suffered for our sake or he died for our sake, although that's true. But we gotta dive into it a little bit more. When we say Christ suffered for our sake, that means that Christ, being without sin, being perfect, paid a price that I was supposed to pay. Now think about it this way. We say that God is just. We also say that God is merciful. How can God be just and mercy at the same time? For justice to be fulfilled, then someone has to pay that price for the sins. And for God to be merciful, then he has to forgive, or else he'll contradict mercy. He has to be merciful for this to actually pan out. So what happened? God, being so amazing, he sent his only begotten Son. He sent Jesus Christ so that he will pay the price for our sake, so that justice is fulfilled, so that mercy is fulfilled. So what ended up happening is that Christ looked at me or looked at you and he said, okay, well, I love this person and I don't want them to die because of their sins. And not the normal death that we have. This is the condemnation, the eternal condemnation. And I want them to be in paradise. And so for that sake, he endured. For that sake of you, specifically you in mind, specifically me in mind, he endured the cross. And we see that constantly through the story of the Passion, where Jesus, he was being yelled at and he remained silent. He was being accused and he remained silent. He was being crucified and he said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Because he died on their behalf as well, with them in mind as well. Could he not have sent down armies of heaven? Yes, he could have. But he didn't, because that would not fulfill the justice of God. That would not balance out the equation, to put it very simplistically and a little bit off. But his love is so great. His love is so amazing towards us that he endured suffering for our sake. And what was the result of that suffering? Salvation for all. So what does that mean for our suffering today? Should we seek out ways to suffer? Probably not, right? It's probably not advice to do that. But when suffering comes about, take it as an opportunity to become saints. When suffering comes about, take it as an opportunity to say, I will continue. I will be better. And we can do that by looking at the Stations of the Cross, because it's very hard. It's easy in theory for me to sit here and tell you that. But when we actually put it into practice, the best thing that you can do is look at the way of the cross, walk the way of the cross, and realize that these are mirrors. These 14 steps are mirrors, and at every single step, we can connect our current suffering to that of Christ and realize that if Christ could do it, I can do it through his name. If Christ could endure this suffering and in a victorious way, so can we. With that said, let's continue to our interview for today with Christine. right, everybody. So my special guest today is Christine. Is such a wonderful person. And to me, she's one of my best friends, but she is not here as my best friend. She's actually here to tell us about her experience and her testimony dealing with suicide, dealing with depression. And to tell you a little bit more about Christine before I hand the mic over to her, Christine right now is studying psychology and she's studying nursing in hopes that she becomes a psychiatric nurse. So there you kind of see already the foreshadowing of where the story is leading and how it impacted her life. What's up, Christine?
Hello. How are you?
I'm pretty good, but you already know that because we were talking earlier. Don't lie to my listeners.
I mean, I can ask how you are again, can't I?
That's true. That's true. How are you?
I'm doing great still. Thank you.
Fantastic. So glad we're doing this. All right. So tell us about yourself. Who's Christine?
I was born and raised in California. Currently living kind of overseas in Lebanon right now, but that's the brief overview. As you said, that I am studying psychology right now and will be pursuing nursing as well in hopes to become a psychiatric nurse practitioner, which would be a great crossover between like a therapist and a psychiatrist, hoping to use what my history was to be able to help others, achieve their optimal potential.
That's amazing. Hopefully that will always work out. And we see you a brilliant and bright psychiatric nurse practitioner, because I forgot that one earlier.
That's okay.
All right. So Christine, tell me a little bit about your background. When did the story start? When did your story start?
So the story starts
it was the summer 1990. Sorry.
Kind of, yeah, but maybe not the summer.
I mean, it technically started when I was a child. I grew up with a father who used physical force to maintain order, or sometimes at random. And that just led into different feelings as a child, until about 12 or 13, I started falling into depression, and that's really when the story starts.
Okay, so what did it feel like falling into depression? When we say depression, first of all, what's the feeling associated with it? Because you hear it left and right, I'm so depressed.
Well, so clinically, depression is losing interest. It's a whole ton of things that it needs to be 2 weeks consistently minimum. So people who are having 1 or 2 bad days, they may use the term that they're depressed, but really it's just having an off day or being sad or whatnot. But being depressed is typically something over a long period of time. For me, how it started is I started just, hormones don't help, obviously, growing up as a teenager. So just like hormones playing with everything that was in my mind psychologically, I started to withdraw more. I wasn't as outgoing as I used to be. I was still very much functional. No one really knew what was going on with me, but the inside of my head was a very deep and dark place that you did not want to visit.
Can you tell us, do you mind sharing any of the thoughts? Like you can distinctly say, okay, this was a specific thought that I thought about myself or about, people around me.
So for me, my depression and anger was all based towards me. I took everything out on myself. So, if I would get a bad grade, I'm stupid. I don't, I deserved it because I don't know enough. It's just very, very negative thoughts. Something happens, it's my fault. I don't deserve to live. I don't deserve to be happy. Those kinds of thoughts.
And what made you say that?
Do
you remember?
No, that's just kind of part of depression,
Was there anyone telling you, well, they didn't really know, but do you remember anyone telling you, oh, you're loved, you are kind, you are good?
maybe not enough. You know, like, my mom tells me I love you and whatnot. My father, up until recently, anytime he's ever tried to say that, it was always very sarcastic. So not enough. I didn't hear it enough.
But now you have a pretty good relationship with your dad, no?
It's decent. It's not bad.
Good. Praise be to God. So what was your outlet? You said you started thinking, you know, you're depressed around 12 or 13. What was going on in your life that maybe balanced things a little bit for you?
What do you mean by balanced? Like something good that I was doing?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I decided to take something bad and make it worse because, you know, if you're going to do it right. So actually, when I remember one day I think it was like around Christmas time, I was around 13. I have a brother who's 7 years younger than me. And, you know, if I'm 13, he's 6, he wants to come into my room and break things. He's, you know,
he's a baby.
Average boy, you know? Yeah, exactly. So he was like, he threatened to run into my room and start like messing things up. And so I ran to my room and I slammed the door shut so he can't come in. Well, my dad got really, really not happy with that. So he decided that I don't deserve to have a door anymore. So he ended up taking the door off the hinges. And I'm like, well, you know, my room is in the middle of the hallway. So people are going, you know, my mom, dad, brother, they're all walking up and down the hallway. I still want to at least be able to change in my bedroom without like being subject to someone looking in or, you know, sleep with some sort of privacy. Right. So I had gotten a blanket and I was taking, what's it called? Push pins. And I was going to push pin just like a blanket on my door just so, you know, there's some sort of barrier. Well, my dad wasn't happy. So he came and he pulled it down and told me, you have privacy when I tell you can have privacy. And that just made me like, it hit harder even because I already didn't have much control in my life. And for my privacy to be fully in his hands, I lost it. I lost my mind. And so he just like walked out and I still had one of those push pins in my hand and I was so angry and didn't know what to do. I ended up like, you know, dragging it across my thigh and it was very weird, but it felt good.
Do you said that no one knew what was going on in your head. Your mom had no idea. Your dad had no idea. What would you tell the parents of a kid who's going through something like that and they have no clue?
Well, the thing is, if you're already involved in a kid's life in a positive way to begin with, the child will probably open up at least to some degree. My dad never really paid attention to that stuff, and my mom was the one who was always at work. So she didn't really have as much of a baseline read on me to show how much I had changed. Either that or I was a great actress. I'm not sure.
So what happened after the pushpin? After that one pushpin incident, did it stop there?
Definitely not. So, like I said, it felt weird. I knew it was wrong, but it felt good. I felt like I had control over something. So just as, you know, my privacy, I had no control over my privacy until I was allowed to have privacy. This was something I had control of. I can cut myself whenever I want to. No one tells me when I can and when I can't. You know, no one tells me what I do it with, where I do it, all that kind of stuff. So it was really something for me to have control over something in my life because I had nothing, you know.
Also, another important thing to note is, I mean, if you have a wound and you don't take care of it, it will get infected. And that's not something I ever wanted. So in the moments after the tranquility subsided, after I would cut myself, I would realize that this wound needs to be tended to. And looking back at it, it was a way that I had to nurse myself back. So I had to take care of myself and love myself when I didn't love me. And I felt like no one else in the world did. But then, I mean, it was something that I leaned upon, and every time I would get angry, it would gradually increase the tendencies to do it and the degree to which I used to do it.
It went from being like a push pin or something to eventually being a piece of glass to you know, you got to get a little fancy. I got an X-Acto knife, you know. So it kept gradually increasing, because just like with anything else, you know, you build up a tolerance to it. So little push pins were nothing to me. It felt like someone was rubbing my skin with a feather or something, you know? So I had to keep going, you know, getting more cuts in, going deeper, just gradually over time.
Did you feel that the depression continued as you did that, or was that your release form, in a sense? Not an adequate one, to say the least, but...
Definitely not adequate. It was... No, obviously it didn't fix the depression, you know, but it was my coping mechanism during a time of more or less of a crisis, you know, so something bad is going on. It was my way of not dealing with what was going on around me. So it made things better temporarily until it made them worse. You know, just like people who take drugs, you know, in the middle of their high, they feel great. Once it's over, their life kind of starts crumbling back apart.
Would you say that this is another form of addiction? Not to a substance, but...
So according to the DSM Diagnostics Manual of Mental Health, it is not. It is a subject made for further research, but I really do believe that it shares a lot of same, it overlaps a lot with addictions.
And from there, from doing that, did it just stay on your thigh? Or did you do something a little bit, you know, worse that took you a further step?
Yeah, so I ended up graduating from my thigh, and it was easier to do it on my arm. So a lot of people, you know, they cut their wrists in hopes to kill themselves. That was never my objective. I actually cut more higher up on my forearm. And it was just a more accessible region. You know, if you're wearing t-shirts or even jacket, you can roll up your sleeves quite easily. But if, for instance, you're at school and you're kind of angry, it's really weird to like go to the restroom and cut yourself there, whereas you can just raise your sleeve and get your so-called fix anywhere. You know?
So there was actual thought behind this. There was like logic that you thought, oh, well, if I get caught, then that's the end of this kind of release. And if I don't get caught, so I have to pull my sleeve a little bit higher.
It's not necessarily about getting caught. It's like I said, the arm was just more accessible, but I never wanted to do my wrist because it's not just for looks. I never wanted to kill myself through self-injury.
Which is a really good thing, thankfully.
Yeah.
We're happy that you didn't do that. At one point, you ended up in the hospital, correct?
In a psychiatric hospital, yeah. So the first time I ended up in a psychiatric hospital, it was the night before my 15th birthday. Thankfully, I never had a quinceañera plan to begin with, so it's all good.
I'm just going to go ahead and remind you that neither of us are Mexican, but yeah.
Hey, you never know. I could have wanted to have a quinceañera.
Again. I'm just going to go ahead and remind you of the Lebanese flag that you're always wearing around.
Shh.
It's quinceañeras are beautiful, by the way.
They really are.
For those
They're super nice.
For those of us, or for those of the people who are listening that have no idea, this is like the Sweet 15 that Latinos do, primarily Mexicans, for I think all Latinos. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure, honestly.
But Christine and I live in a very Mexican state, I think it's fair to say. So there's a lot of, we get to experience a lot of the Mexican culture as well, embedded into the American culture. So
considering we're only a 2-hour drive away from Mexico, kind of makes sense.
Perfectly. So with that said, okay, so you didn't have a quinceañera planned night before your 15th birthday.
Yeah, so I reached a point where I needed to talk to someone, right? I couldn't keep all of what's going on inside of me a secret. And I had never at this point gotten to where like I had wanted to kill myself or planned to kill myself. I just had thoughts about dying. Like, I just wish I were dead, you know? So, full disclaimer, at this point, I was not religious at all. In fact, I was very much against religion, against all of it. But I used to still...
met around that time, though. We met around the time you were 14. I was 15. I was 14. You were 15,
around, Yeah, so we did meet at church. The reason why I kept going to church, a couple of reasons. One, my mom wanted to go to church. I didn't want to fight with her. Just let it be. Two, I used to go to like church camp and like the youth programs and stuff. So I had friends there. And three, there was always donuts after mass. So why wouldn't you want to go? Like, seriously?
And I love it. Lure them in with the food.
Right? And then every once in a while they had pizza and ooh.
Naish, do you remember the church festival?
Oh man.
So when going with the little bit of when the church bought the new church, right? They bought the new building, and we performed together. We did like this dance, like a depke dance. Do you remember?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So from an outside perspective, I didn't see anything. Like I had no idea that you were going through anything at that time. And it may have been like a year or so later, but from, like an outsider's point of view, I had no clue.
Most people don't. A lot of people don't know who's depressed around them until they speak about it. A lot of people unfortunately do a good job of hiding it. Mental health has a very big stigma, and people just don't want to admit that they might be going through something.
So what happened when you admitted?
So I actually was, like I said, still going to church camp, and I didn't know who to talk to. I mean, come on, I'm not going to tell a 14, 15-year-old that I would like to die. Like, I knew that wasn't going to sit well with anyone. Mm-hmm. So I need to talk to an adult. But like, who? First of all, who? And second of all, do I really have to do this in person? Like, can I just hide somewhere and talk? So I actually decided, I mean, this is before cell phones were a thing, and, AIM was still coming out at this point.
Right.
I had asked the priest at church camp for his email address, and I wanted to speak to him and see, like, I don't know, I just wanted to vent to someone or have someone help make sense of the thoughts that I was having, because I knew they weren't rational, but it's not like there's an off switch, So I ended up emailing him a little bit back and forth, and I had told him, my dad, used to hit me, was hitting me at the time still and whatnot, that I have cut myself. And it's like, if there's a God, why would he do this? And I didn't know this, but he's a mandated reporter. He's around, children. There's, priests, teachers, medical professionals. They're all mandated reporters. And when they, believe that someone, a minor under the age of 18, is in danger, they are by law required to call the cops. So next thing I know, I was sitting at my aunt's house, and I get a call from my mother on the family cell phone. We had one cell phone per family. I got a call on the family cell phone, and then I get a call on my aunt's house phone. My mom's on one ear, my dad's on the other ear. What did you do? The cops are looking for you. Okay. Obviously, I knew what had happened. I'm like, yeah. I really honestly thought about running away, but like, I'm at my aunt's house. I didn't have a chance to like pack a grab bag or anything. Where am I going to go in the middle of the night? Mm-hmm. You know, like, yeah. How long is that going to last for? So, the cops, my dad, led the way because, you know, she lives only 5 minutes away. We've made our little area here like a little daya, like a little village in Lebanon. You know, we have all of our aunts.
Tell me about it. There's like 10 houses around me that are my relatives.
Exactly.
Carry on.
We don't need to be in Lebanon to have a little Lebanese city.
Exactly.
So I lost my track of thought, to be honest.
So your dad led the way?
Yeah, my dad led the way, and as the doorbell rang to open up the door, this was later at night, there was 2 cops actually holding my dad back because he was trying to like run inside, and he's like, don't say anything, don't tell them anything. And the cop took me aside and questioned me inside. And he was asking, I have always been a terrible liar. However, I've always been good at not telling the truth. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? So yes. I beat around the words to make people think something that I didn't really say. It's just I make them hear what they want to hear.
That's called manipulative, but we're just going to leave that
one. It's manipulative, but I didn't
yes, you didn't
lie.
Yeah. I just hid the truth. I altered the truth.
Exactly.
I tailored the truth. But carry on.
Anyway, I made it seem like, you know, the abuse was something of the past. And so they dropped that part, but they're like, we want to see your scars. And at this point, it was still on my thighs, and it was still mostly just, you know, push pins and whatnot. And so I was wearing shorts at the time. So I rolled the shorts up, and he's like, okay, well, we need to take you to the ER. I'm like, wait, whoa, what? Like,
yeah, I'm fine. I'm standing here talking to you, so I'm fine.
Right? If a cat scratched me, it would be 10 times worse than this. Like, yes. I don't get why. He's like, no, you know, he took me in the back of his cruiser down to the ER, where there my parents started finding out what happened, that I had opened up to someone and that they were mandated to report her. They had to report it. And I was placed on something called a 5150. It's an order by law to be held under a psychiatric hold, which could be, due to a danger of self, others, or gravely disabled. And I was obviously very much a danger to myself. So I was held in a psychiatric hospital. It's a minimum of 72 hours. I actually ended up being there for about 7 days.
Why?
Why
were you there for so long?
Well, because my parents didn't want me to be on medication. And, you know, I guess there's a judge who was like, you know, looking over my case and whatnot. I never had a chance to meet him or her, but they said that I will not be released until I'm on medication to have my mood stabilized, to bring up my morale, so to speak, a little bit more, to not be as depressed. And so it took them a while to finally accept that term. And then I was put on medication. And a few days later, I was released with the condition that I had to follow up with a psychiatrist.
So why didn't they want you on medication?
They weren't believing that I actually was depressed. They didn't know how bad I was struggling I was cutting for over a year before they found out about it.
Mm. And what happened with your parents when they found out? Did they, did your dad's behavior change? Did he get really mad when you came in after 7 days? What went on?
To be honest, I don't remember. It was kind of a blur. Mm-hmm. It's just a lot happened in that time frame, mm-hmm. so I can't really speak as to what happened then and there. But I know things started returning, unfortunately, back to normal as if they were before all of that. So, I remember after I came back, he was a little bit more easygoing at first, and then it just reverted back to the way it was. So that led to self-injuring again, and it was basically like rinse and repeat.
How old were you then?
So between the ages of 15 and about 17 and a half, I was hospitalized a total of 12 times.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it must have been at 19 where you went again to the hospital.
No.
I remember driving to visit you, and I didn't have my license till I was 18.
You drove to visit me. I was, at the time, 24, I want to say.
Okay, so these things stayed and repeated until... So it stopped from around 18 to 24?
You can never say it stopped. It was under control.
Okay, so what happened that triggered it at 24 that you said? Because I remember distinctly I took my car and I went to the hospital and I was there. This is coming out of my memory, not to say I was a supportive friend, but this is what I'm trying to make myself out to be. No, but this is the link in my head, so I must have had my license at that time. So what happened?
You did have your license, yes. What happened with that is, I mean, I've been on antidepressants since I was 15, and I still am on them now. It's just something that I've come to terms with, that it's something I'm going to need for the rest of my life. Just like people taking, insulin for diabetes, it's just something that needs, it needs to be treated, basically. So that was all under control, but before... during that time, I actually was studying nursing, as you know, and I failed the final semester, and I had such a detailed plan at this point for my life. I had already gotten a tentative job offer. So I already had my whole life planned out, till retirement, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that came crumbling down in one day. And I just couldn't handle the stress.
And it wasn't, for the record, for anyone who's listening, it was not her fault.
It was not.
It was not her fault. She said she failed. She didn't fail. It was not her fault. Carry on.
No, I am accepting the fault of not studying well enough for the final, but it shouldn't have been the end of my... I should have been allowed to retake the class, but that part's not my fault.
Yeah. And the fact that he only had one chance was also not your fault, because others had multiple chances.
Yeah.
But we're not going to talk. I'm not bitter. Who's bitter? Who's bitter about this? Notice that I'm more upset over this than she is. Just so we're clear.
You are. I have. Well, I mean, to be fair, I lost my mind completely and decided to go to psychiatric hospital. So I got angry all at once, and I got rid of it all at once. You're still hanging on to this.
Yeah, this is what? 5 years later? 5 years later.
2015, yeah, it's 5 years.
5 years later, I'm still hanging this over that nursing facility's. I had that nursing school's head for doing this. But
that's a true friend.
They were jerks. They had no rights to do this. But, it was God's will, and
100%.
It was God's will, and I think you've overcome a lot since then, and you've changed a lot, and I got to see that, and it's such a blessing. But can we take a moment to break the stigma on the medication and on what it means to be depressed? And because you're not depressed at the moment, you're happy, you're laughing, we hung out yesterday and
we were hanging out social distancing, just for all the viewers out there.
Yes.
We were sitting at a park outside, 6 feet apart. Don't worry.
We ate the same sushi from the same plate.
But we didn't touch each other's food.
That's true. But I'm just saying, if we're eating the same roll, practically. But, we're a social distance. All in all three of us were kind of spread apart.
Okay, now they're confused who's the third person is.
Oh, it's always me, myself, and I, but I don't want to be too boastful. I'm kidding. We had another friend join. We had another friend join us, and we, we had a group thing going on. Just the three of us, which we hadn't seen each other in months. But, okay, so tell me again, let's break the stigma.
Yes,
how's Christine today? Christine is on medication, but it's not because she's crazy.
Well, let's not say anyone's ever crazy. That's a stigma within itself. But
so break my stigma. I'm serious. That's the point.
Look,
because people think, once you're on medication or you go to a psychiatric facility, you go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you're automatically crazy. It's just for crazy people, right? But that's not true.
Definitely
That's not true. So tell us.
So there are so many people that are around you, either the people who are listening to us or their friends. A lot of them have been through or are depressed, or have had some form of mental health crisis. It's quite common, but because people don't talk about it, no one knows. The stigma behind it is, you should have your mind should be stronger than this, mind over matter type thing. But that's not really the way it works. You don't tell a diabetic, you don't need insulin, just think better thoughts. You don't tell someone who's broken their leg, you don't need a cast, just be stronger. It just doesn't work that way. So with mental health, it's the same thing. Someone could have something a little bit more lifelong, needing insulin, AKA at this, for mental health, they might need antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications for the rest of their lives. Or there's some people who are just, it's a little bit more situational. It's something that happens for, let's say, 2 or 3 months. Someone hits a very low point in their life. And that would be akin to a cast. They need something just kind of patch things up, hold them together while they work through it.
Okay, and so you kind of told us a bit of your story, a bit of where you stand today in terms of your education, but where do you stand mentally today? How do you feel?
So I'm not going to lie and say that I'm always very happy and always very positive. I do have ups and downs.
And I don't think anybody is always happy and always positive.
Exactly. It's quite normal for a lot of people. I know I've gotten a lot better grasp through years of therapy and just education about it all. I know when I'm starting to fall down a path that I don't want to follow. So at that point, reach out to friends such as yourself. And it's just sometimes I just need to talk it out a little bit. Sometimes I need time alone. It depends. But it's all about coping. It's all about coping.
So learning how to cope. And just going back to what happened when you were 24, you didn't cut yourself. It was because you wanted to prevent those thoughts.
Exactly. So I was extremely depressed. I wasn't actively suicidal, but I just, I kind of wished that I had never made it alive to this point, and I didn't, cut myself. But I knew that these thoughts aren't thoughts that I ever wanted permanently, because I've had those thoughts before and then I was better for a very long time. And then this one event kind of pushed me backwards quite a bit, and so I knew I needed to get help before things got too far along.
Beautiful. So where does Jesus come into play? You said you weren't religious at 14. Now you kind of beat me to events, and we're always, I mentioned adoration. Christine is already there. So
it's not a race, but yes, I'm usually there.
Yeah. Okay.
So
tell me, where does Jesus enter the picture?
So just to get a little bit better of a picture from my background.
Parentheses, enter Jesus. Sorry.
No, pause. Sorry, Jesus, we're gonna put you on pause just for a second longer.
Inter Benvolio. Sorry, that's a different play. Carry on.
Anyway, so when I was about 17 and a half, 18, things had gotten just so deep, so dark, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I mean, think about it. Someone dealing with depression that's getting progressively worse from the age of 14 to 18, that's not easy. And my thoughts were, kept going from I want to die to I want to kill myself to I'm going to kill myself and this is how. And so that's why
you planned it. You at one point
I had several plans.
Okay.
I had several plans. So, I got very creative too. There were things that it just weren't possible to happen, but I was like, I'm going to do it.
What if I go to Mars and there's no air there?
Okay, not quite, but yes. So, and
we joke a little bit about it, but it's honestly not a joke. So, for the people who are listening, we kind of are doing this hopefully to ease the mood of the conversation, but this is a serious topic, you guys. So,
it is a serious topic.
If you're dealing with suicide thoughts, then talk to somebody.
Please call the National Suicide Hotline.
If you're in America, what's the hotline? Do you know the number? I posted it the other day.
1-800.
It's National Suicide.
There's actually even a text line. Let me find out what that is. There's because, I actually have a bit of anxiety talking on the phone, and I don't like to talk on the phone. So there is a line that you can text. Yeah.
There's also a chat. So it's 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. 1-800-273-8255. Have you ever called that number?
I have not. Like I said, I don't like talking on the phone very much. I actually ended up using the crisis text line, which you can go ahead and just, if you text start to 741-741, they will have someone who can text back and forth with you.
Perfect. And this is for Americans. If you're in America, this is something that you can do.
There's resources worldwide, though. Just, if you go online.
These specific resources. I mean, I'm sure if you go on the Lifeline and you want to chat with someone, you can do it from anywhere in the world. They don't check if you're American, but if you're calling the 1-800 number, that's an American number. All right. So going back to what we were saying.
Yeah, so it was these suicidal thoughts and stuff. That's what sent me to the hospital 12 times before I was 18. And, once you start making actual plans, it's one thing to say, I wish I weren't alive, to I want to kill myself and this is how. And there was just one day, you can't even ask me what I was, I felt my life was over about because I don't remember. But I decided that, I had a fight with my parents. I decided, you know what? I don't want to live anymore. I'm done. So I went to my room. I grabbed two bottles of pills, and I just swallowed them. And I was like, no, this is easier. And immediately after, it felt like, what's the saying, like the eye of the hurricane, like the calm within the storm. Mm-hmm. I felt really calm for a bit, and I was just like, it feels like things are going to be okay. And then the hurricane hit, and I realized, wait, is this really worth it? Is it worth me killing myself over? So
what did you do?
I kind of, my parents totally knew that I swallowed the pills because I was angry, and I kind of swallowed it in front of them, and they hadn't done anything at this point. So eventually they walked back into my room about 10-15 minutes later, and they're like, how you feeling? I'm like, well, that's a very easy way to go on about it. Yeah, right? So I was like, take me to the hospital. I want to get my stomach pumped. So I went to the ER. Drank some charcoal to help deactivate everything. And funny enough, I wasn't sent to the psychiatric hospital after this. Don't ask me how. The psych evaluator may not have fully understood the situation. But I had realized that, you know what? I don't want to die. I want to, but I don't. I I don't want to be the person making these choices. And so
I'm crushed by the weight of the cross, but I'm not the one that's going to hang myself on that cross.
Not what I was thinking at the time, but yes. So now, cue in Jesus.
Enter Benvolio. Sorry. Enter Jesus.
So, you know, like I said earlier, I was still going to church with my mom and stuff, and I would go and, you know, they'd put on they'd start singing a hymn, and I'm like, ooh, I like this song. And so I'd start singing with them. And that was really the extent of my attention that I paid to within the Mass. Because around this time I said, if there's a God, I hate him. Mm-hmm. There's no way a God that they say is loving can do this, would put me through this.
For back to your childhood for a second, because we're talking about songs and you play music, your parents taught you music, right? They put you in classes?
When I was younger, yes.
Yes. And you learned French as well when you were younger?
At one point I did, yes.
And for the people, I'm saying these things because for the people who are listening, they need to know that there were good things in your life. There were. You know, at one side, it might have been so hard for your parents to comprehend how bad the situation was because in their minds, they thought they were doing the best they could, right?
There's a lot of people who don't realize. I mean, let's take, for example, Robin Williams. You know, everyone thought he was the greatest man on earth, you know, really funny and everything. When really he was dealing with depression, and after his diagnosis with Parkinson's, he decided that he just didn't want to live anymore and took his own life. But who would have thought? You know, exactly. Who would have thought that?
Exactly. So the reason why I mention these things is because people need to be aware that depression is not, as we said earlier, it's not something that's visible to everybody or easy to detect. Correct. Because really, your parents thought, okay, well, we're putting her through music classes, we're teaching her, new languages, we're taking her out. It's not like they locked you in the house.
No, not at all.
You know, they would take you out. To Disney, to Universal, to whatever.
Oh yeah, we had plenty of activities, a lot of cool things, but
it was something from inside.
Yeah, depression is so strong, you can never see the positives ever. Mm-hmm. You know, the positive is a lot harder to see than all the negatives. For like parents who have children who they don't know if they're depressed or not, honestly, straight up ask them how they're feeling. You know, it's not like, hey, how are you? It's like, have a sit down talk with them and talk about their feelings, talk about their emotions. A lot of people shy away from the emotions, especially if they're bad. No, talk about them. Especially from a young age, you get your child to open up to it. They're more likely to turn to you for support rather than run away from you.
Mm-hmm. So don't be satisfied with just, oh, I'm good.
No, ask for details. Yeah.
Like, how was your day at school? Oh, it was nice. Probe them, ask for more, find out what they did, who did they talk to, how did they, interact. So back to Jesus and
back to Jesus. So yeah, I mean, I was going to church mostly because, like I said, the donuts and friends and whatnot, but I wouldn't pay attention to Mass at all. And one day, and I kid you not, this is how the thought went through in my head. I was looking around this church and I'm like, there's so many people here, and these people come willingly to listen to, to Mass for, an hour or so a week. What does this, sorry, but this is literally what I thought. What does this idiot say up there that is that important? So I decided one day to listen to the sermon. I was like, I'm curious.
And by the way, for the people who are listening, she wasn't like passively at church. She was always at church. Like, she was there every week. She was there for any activity that we did. She was there. She just wasn't listening.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was there for the activities. The activities were fun, but no, my mind wasn't there when the Mass was there, you know?
And then the Holy Spirit worked. And what did you hear?
So the priest said something, and I can't tell you exactly what he said, but it was something that kind of moved me about confession, about reconciliation. I'm like, okay. I mean, if it's as great as he says it is, let's give it a shot. It's not like he's going to tie me down to the confessional or anything. Like, if I don't like it, I'll just get up in the middle of it and walk away. What's the worst that can happen? You know? Mm-hmm. So I went in there ready to fight him. I was like, I am going to have the most intense discussion, and I am going to prove to him that God doesn't exist. So I walk in there and I'm like, if there's a God, I hate him. And he just looks me dead square in the eye. He's like, good. I'm like, wait, what? Like, he just took away every single weapon I had. Like, I'm just standing there like,
go, Abuna, go.
Did you hear what I just said? Are you sure you heard it clearly? He's like, no, it's good that you're questioning, because following blindly isn't going to, be anything. It's good to have questions. And you said if, and I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you said if you hate God, if there's a God, you hate him. So do you hate God? I'm like, yes. He's like, therefore you believe in a God.
Dun, dun,
okay.
Dun. Mic drop.
Right? I'm like, carry on.
I like where this is going.
So basically, I mean, that was, like, if I had to pinpoint a moment that changed my life, that was what changed my life. Now, it wasn't like a 180 overnight. It was, you know what? Let's start listening to the priest, what he has to say, because obviously he has an understanding behind this. And maybe, there is a reason why I went through what I went through. It's just, people can't just needlessly suffer all the time. It's just, that's not a thing, it doesn't make sense. So I started listening more. I started, trying to pray more. And little by little, it started, I started to read up more, started to read the Bible, started to ask questions, get more involved with church, and not just, the activities, which obviously are fun, but like, it's going to the activities for the fun and also bringing Jesus up, which is kind of cool.
It is. And, I think you also started attending like the MYA, the National MYA, and you got to see like people from different, that's a Maronite Young Adult Convention that we have every year. And seeing just everybody, I think is really exciting. And I personally invite parents to make sure that their kids go to church or they go to the activities, even if they don't want to. Yeah. You didn't want to, right?
I didn't want to. I didn't even believe, but you never know if that could make a difference. And to be honest, and not the best reasoning, but you know what? At least I had a solid group of friends that had a good background of all things, like I may not be believing or whatnot, but they all come from good Catholic families. Like a lot of my friends at that point, meaning, they're not getting mixed up in drugs. They're not getting mixed up in gangs and all that stuff. So
it's a good support system.
Exactly. And it gives the opportunity to be involved again.
What would you say that the church did that was really good and that really helped you?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Like you said, the MYA it's a great program, and it helped me meet people from all around the United States. And I got involved with that to the point where I was actually on the planning board for 3 years, which was awesome. I got to really get to know other people. For instance, now if I go across the United States, I probably have someone's household to stay in for the weekend if I wanted to go. Just like the trip that you and I took with some of our friends to New York 2 years ago. I have a friend living in Lower Manhattan in the middle of everything. And I'm just like, hey, yeah, hi, I'm coming to crash on your floor for the next 3 days. It gave a lot of great connections. Another thing that the church has given me, as I was saying earlier, I am actually living in Lebanon right now because I'm studying in Lebanon. And the national convention, the yearly convention that the Maronites have called NAM, National Apostolate of Maronites, they give out scholarships, and most people honestly apply for the scholarships to the schools they want to go to. Here, it's a few hundred, a couple of grand, depending on which scholarship. But there was one where you could do a semester abroad in Lebanon at NDU, Notre Dame University of Lebanon.
For those who are listening who don't know what we're talking about, as we said at the beginning of the episode, Christine and I are both Lebanese, and a majority of Lebanese Christian, or a good amount of Lebanese Christians, are Maronites. And since that's kind of like the main Catholic church, we all end up at some point or another, whether you guys have heard me talk about being Melkite before, but basically I grew up with the Maronites. We all end up meeting together at one of the churches, even though they might be like about 40 to 50 minutes away, because this is where our Lebanese community is.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, between the Maronite and especially the Melkite church, anytime they have a festival, we're always
there's a crossover.
Yeah.
There's a crossover.
Yeah, for sure. But the church gave me a scholarship to study overseas in Lebanon, and it was amazing. I mean, they paid for everything.
You also went to the Maronite Academy.
I did go to Maronite Academy, which was also very cool. So it's, for those of you who don't know, a program that tries to get like the Maronites back to Lebanon to kind of explore, because there's a lot of people who live outside
not just
of
the Maronites.
Catholics.
I went to, well, not just Catholics. We had Orthodox when I went.
Really?
Yeah.
Very
cool. We had a few Orthodox when I went.
Very cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, but most importantly, Christine, I think I would hope that the church gave you the Eucharist.
It did, for sure.
How's that relationship?
Like we were talking about the other day, honestly, like if I'm going through a hard time, I just go sit even 15 minutes in adoration. My whole perspective on everything changes. There's a lot more optimism. There's a little bit of a spring to my step. It's knowing that I'm loved, knowing that I'm cared for.
I love it. So, we've kind of come to the end of our episode. What's one thing you'd leave the listeners with?
Everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Had I not gone through all the hardship that I've been through, I wouldn't be heading down such a great path and, making myself available to help out other, adolescents. My target population that I want to work with is adolescents, because a lot of people don't want to work with them, and it's obviously, from my experience, something I can relate to a lot more than the average Joe out there, working with them. So without everything that I went through, I couldn't be as empathetic and understanding towards, mental health and all that.
And I think, you mentioned adolescence. That's a very pivotal stage. I know from, when I used to go out into like the field and ask people why they love Jesus. I don't know if you remember that project, but for about a year or so, I would go out and I would ask people around, anywhere that I would see them, why do you love Jesus? And I had got a good amount of stories that said our story started at 13, our story started at 15. And it was kind of that age where they either choose to go, in, or they choose to go out. And in your case, you chose the opposite road, but your mom kind of made you stay in church, and that was the turning point.
Yeah, so at 13, I decided, nope, peace out. This isn't for me. But my mom kept me going to church, which gave me the opportunity to jump back in.
Beautiful. Okay, so everything happens for a reason, and that's very true. I like to add that everything happens everything will work out for the benefit of those who believe in God. So yes, sometimes we make poor choices. Sometimes we have terrible ideas, where we think nobody loves us, where we think we're alone, where we think that's how things should end. but the truth, and then we come back to God, and God uses that bad for our benefit. So even though it's bad, God can still use it for the benefit, and it will at one point have a reason. So with that said, thank you so much for being with us today. Especially thank you to anyone who's listening out there. And if you are struggling with a depression, if you're struggling with suicide, please, please, please talk to somebody. Please let somebody know. And like we said, the hotline is available. You reach out to people. I think, Christine, do you want to give your social media? You know, if you your Instagram, maybe your Instagram account, if people want to reach out to you.
Yeah, sure. Go back to being how Lebanese I am. My username on pretty much any platform is Lebanese Cheese 2, LEBANESECHEESE, the number 2.
Because someone else took Lebanese Cheese 1?
No, actually, I don't remember if it was like MySpace era or something that like they needed a number somewhere in the username, and 1 just sounded kind of lame. Yeah, so I just put 2, and then I just made it my username across like everything.
Fantastic. Beautiful story. Thrilling. So Lebanese Cheese too. And you could reach out to me. You could reach out to Christine. We'll point you in the right direction. Keep in mind that we are not experts. Christine is going to be.
No, not yet. Not yet.
But hopefully we can at least point you in the right direction. I too am a mandated reporter. Just an FYI.
Yeah, as a teacher.
Yep. So that, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode as much as I did. It was truly a blessing to talk to you, Christine. And for anyone who's looking for me on social media, it's The Word with Rita. So on Instagram and on Facebook is at The Word with Rita. And on YouTube, if you want to see any of my videos, it's youtube.com/Rita Saikali, Saikali. This was your Catholic Girl on the Radio, and I'll be with you next week. Bye.